You're looking good, and it feels good to be with you today. Hello, I'm Kendall Brian Hunter, and I'm author of this book, Consider My Servant Job. Get a head start on the Old Testament for next year. I deal with the problem of pain and human suffering. If you've got questions, if you can't find answers, at least you'll find some comfort in the words I've written. So give it a look, and you'll feel great once you read it, get a copy of it. This is Come Follow Me, Get to the Point, where I try and cover the Come Follow Me topic in a very brief amount of time. Um, Over the years, this has gotten a little bit longer, and it depends upon the section and what we're talking about. Today is section 124. The theme is Cornerstone, Beautiful Nauvoo. It's the longest section of the Doctrine and Covenants. It covers a lot of topics, so this may be a supersized edition. So, for some background, the church has experienced a series of colonizing setbacks. Early church history, Palmyra, Fayette, here, there, and everywhere, Kirtland, then Zion in Missouri, far west, Quincy, and the latest settlement is here in Commerce, Illinois. They knew they had to build here, and then they had to do some construction. Sorry, I'm dealing with a little bit of a lighting issue right now. Let me get that going. Okay, there, the lighting's a little bit sharper now. So they had to build, and there's 7 elements to the city of Nauvoo. Not sure if this elements is the correct word, but we have 7 aspects of it. First of all, you have this revelation, section 124. This discusses the spiritual organization. Then you have the Nauvoo Charter. That's the political and civic organization, the legal instrument that you're able to that created the city. You have the Nauvoo Temple, which is a family organization. You have the Nauvoo House, which is an outreach to visitors. You have the University of Nauvoo, which is the educational organization. You have the Nauvoo Agricultural and Manufacturing Association, trades, jobs. You have the Nauvoo Legion, which is a military and self-defense aspect. So you had a lot of going on here. This was, after a series of maybe not so much false starts, but preparatory experiments, you have Nauvoo. What happens is when you have the Exodus, Brigham Young and the early saints took the pattern Nauvoo and just transplanted it to Salt Lake City. So this is the pattern or groundwork for Salt Lake City. They had the experience. They knew what they were doing. So when they formed Salt Lake City in the Great Basin, Intermountain West, they had this pattern that they could work from, that you need not just a church organization, but a civic organization. And of course, at this thing, church and state were the same thing, but they had to have the civil offices. So here's some major points from the section. The first one is begins with a commandment to issue a proclamation. Now, we've been doing we've been living in an age and an era of many proclamations, starting with the family proclamation. Before that, the church's sesquicentennial in 1980. There's one by the First Presidency, but we have the 3 main ones: the family proclamation, the living Christ, and now the Restoration Proclamation. So 1830, presumably there will be another proclamation issued. But this one, there have been previous ones written. There's a Voice of Warning by Parley P. Pratt, and then there's a letter to Queen Victoria. There's also by Parley P. Pratt. Orson Hyde wrote an address to the Hebrews and a pamphlet, which is addressed more particularly to the German nation. Orson Hyde did the mission to rededicating Jerusalem for the gathering of Israel. The Book of Mormon has been presented to 2 sovereigns, Queen Victoria by Lorenzo Snow and the King Oscar II of Sweden by Jan Sjödahl. And this proclamation was never quite written. The counselors apostatized. I think Parley P. Pratt finally wrote it. It's interesting. There is or it was issued by the 12 later on by Brigham Young, if I remember correctly. I forgot to put that in my notes. There's a subtext to the Second Coming, the expression Voice of Warning, which comes from section 1. And then the late Russell M. Nelson twice warned us about, the Second Coming. We need to get ready for the Second Coming. The secret has been revealed to the servants of the prophet. So the section talks about 2 houses, the temple, but also the Nauvoo House, which is a hotel. The hotel is really close to the river, so as people would be coming up the mighty Mississippi, think Mark Twain and Tom Sawyer, they'd have a place to stay at, to contemplate the word of the Lord and the cornerstone. That was the name of Nauvoo as the Cornerstone. It was a missionary tool, welcoming the great ones to the city, kings and queens and presidents, etc. Compare this to the Hotel Utah and the Temple patron housing. People criticize the church for getting involved in temporal matters, owning the property around Temple Square. What do you think about this section? There's some, we have tax protesters, we have tithing protesters who take their money and spend the Lord's money giving it to other charities. Maybe read this section about the church's involvement in temporal affairs and building projects. The Nauvoo House is equally as important as a temple. There is limited manpower in Nauvoo, and they had to go back and forth with the staffing issue to construct one. Okay, we need to do the, as you read the history of the church, it's okay, we need to get people here building the Nauvoo House. Okay, we need to build the temple. So finally the temple went out and they didn't finish it. Emma Smith's husband roofed it. So I've never been to Nauvoo, so I don't know what it looks like. I've just seen pictures of it. But so you can see, I see these pictures, which is if you're kind of the situation that I'm in. The next one is the item is a quorum of Nauvoo House. Now, it's interesting. We think of quorums as priesthood organizations. We normally use the word committee, but this is a quorum. And remember, the church, we're using the word quorum differently than the world uses it. The world uses the word quorum, the minimal amount of people necessary for a body to perform a function. We actually refer to this entire body as a quorum, so it's a different sense of the meaning. They offered stock between $50,000 and then $15,000. The church got a revelation to set up a company with stock. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So here's my advice on stock. Your financial priority is 1, to get on a budget, 2, to get out of debt, 3, don't do drugs. And after you got those 3 things under control, then you start working about the stock market and use index funds and mutual funds, growth stock mutual funds. And not individual stocks, but index funds and mutual funds. You can read about those. Just do whatever Dave Ramsey tells you to do. So that's the Nauvoo House, the Nauvoo Temple. There's a call for materials. We got the wood from Wisconsin, and also a call for antiquities and knowledge of antiquities. This is a bit for a museum for the University of Nauvoo, but you need to understand ancient history to understand the temple. For those of you who watch Stargate SG-1s, people nowadays, with the STEM being the rage, we think every problem can be solved by Samantha Carter. Sometimes you need a Daniel Jackson in there to solve some problems, if you catch this reference. Build a house into his name. The importance of building a baptismal font. The Kirtland Temple did not have a baptismal font. This one did. Again, verily I say unto you, how shall your washings be acceptable unto me, except you perform them in a house which you have built to my name? That expression, house into the name, it's unusual. Why got your name? Well, think of it in terms of identity theft when a person misuses your name. The name is the identity, it's the authority, and it's the attributes. Therefore, verily I say unto you that your anointings and your washings and your baptisms for the dead and your solemn assemblies and your memorials for your sacrifices by the sons of Levi and for your oracles in your most holy places wherein you receive conversations. Oracles in the most holy where you see your conversations. Well, certainly that can be the veil ceremony, but also when you're sitting in the celestial room getting personal revelation, and your statutes and judgments for the beginning of the revelations and foundation of Zion, and for the glory, honor, and endowment of all her municipals. You think about the term, you have Zion, then you have the municipals of Zion. We talk about being a Zion people, but what about the municipals of Zion? Ordained by the ordinance of my holy house, which my people are always commanded to build unto my holy name. Once again, unto his holy name. Our prophet, Dallin H. Oaks, has written a book about that. I suggest you look into that. For I deign, not design, but deign, to reveal unto my church things which have been kept hid from the foundation of the world, things that pertain to the dispensation of the fullness of the times. See, this is interesting. We talk about the fullness of the gospel, and we have all this interesting stuff in the Doctrine and Covenants, and it's like, well, wait a second, the Book of Mormon contains the fullness of the gospel, but then we have all this, like, degrees of glory, eternal duration of matter in the Doctrine and Covenants. What's that? Is that part of the gospel? Well, yeah, no. Is that the fullness of the gospel is something really, it's a little bit tiny. Third and fourth articles of faith. You understand that. That's the fullness of the gospel. It's a very simple message. But what this section is teaching us is that we got some stuff revealed in our dispensation that hasn't been revealed in previous dispensations. Stuff above and beyond the fullness of the gospel, if you catch my drift. Even more fullness, if we can use that term. And that there's just some unique things that we have that other dispensations did not have. Since we're living this dispensations, we're not aware of it. But if you're to live in other dispensations, they'd be surprised. We know all this extra stuff. For example, in the Book of Mormon, their version of the Book of Malachi has 2 chapters, chapters 3 and 4. Our Book of Malachi has 4 chapters in it. Their version of Isaiah starts with chapter 2. We have this chapter 1 to Isaiah. There's some speculation that there's some editing going on with the Book of Isaiah, and that chapter 1 wasn't written by Isaiah, which would be an interesting touchdown for the Book of Mormon. But yeah, we have some extra stuff here, and that's kind of confuses us when we talk about the term fullness of the gospel. You have the fullness of the gospel, and you have the things which have been hidden from the foundation world, things that are just unique to our dispensation. Temple, which you'd have the temple grounds, you'd have some office space in there. Talks about that in the last verse. If you live in Old Provo, you can have some cramped chapels. For the past, probably about 20 years, I've been living in some really small buildings here in Provo. Right now I'm attending the Provo City Center Chapel, which is right across, a block away from the City Center Temple. It's the one that's shaped like a Y. It's really cramped. Section 32, or verse 32, it talks about if we don't build this temple, we'll be rejected as a church, and our dead will be rejected with us. I don't know the status of this idea now, but the Community of Christ, or a reorganized church, cites this as a fault. They said that, the church didn't finish the Nauvoo temple, so the church got rejected. And Joseph Fielding Smith wrote about this in a pamphlet called The Origin of the Reorganized Church and the Question of Succession. You could read about it. If you can't, the pamphlet's found on archive.org. Joseph Fielding Smith, or Joseph F. Smith Jr., as he went by at the time. It's Question of Succession, the history of the organized church. You can read it. There's excerpts from it from Doctrine of Salvation, Volume 1, Chapter 15. But it's an interesting idea, just throw it out there, how they read this. And I don't know what the status is now. We're not as antagonistic as we used to be. What happened is over 100 years ago, the Community of Christ sent some missionaries to Salt Lake City to calling us Brighamites, and said they were Josephites, and there was some interaction with it. And Joseph Fielding Smith was an apostle at the time, so he took the charge of it. Plus, with the family relation, he was nephew, I don't know what you call it, Joseph F. Smith and Joseph Smith III were cousins, so, whatever that relationship is. Point 2, people. Like a lot of the sections of the Doctrine and Covenants, there's a lot of assignments given at the end, mission companionships, and this one you get some assignments to John Bennett and William Law. Both of them are giving promises, but they fail to live up to their promises, and that's a voice of warning to us. You think about the people who've left the church and the status of their patriarchal blessing. You go on YouTube and see people who left the church and said, look, you had a patriarchal blessing, and you're just wadding it up and tossing it down the garbage disposal. I want to talk a little bit about verse 87. Therefore, let my servant William put his trust in me and cease to fear concerning his family because of the sickness of the land. If you love me, keep my commandments, and the sickness of the land shall redound to your glory. That was a comfort during COVID-19. Now, the Doctrine and Covenant says that there will be a sickness poured out from time to time, just as viruses mutate. There's a new version of the flu, and there'll be new versions of COVID-19, and there may be another lab leak, but the sickness of the land shall redound to your glory. Think about that promise. Alman Babbitt got this verse. And with my servant Alman Babbitt, There are many, many things with which I am not pleased. Behold, he aspireth to establish his counsel instead of the counsel which I have ordained, even that of the presidency of my church. And he setteth up a golden calf for the worship of my people. Now we understand the allusion, golden calf with Moses and Aaron, and how Aaron set up this golden calf while Moses was on Mount Sinai. Didn't end well. What was going on is Alman Babbitt was stake president in Kirtland, and he's this guy who would get disfellowship and rejoin the church, and he just yo-yoed around with the church. What was going on is that Joseph Smith sent a letter, and he was wanting to discontinue all the stakes outside of Nauvoo, and wanted all the members to concentrate in Nauvoo. Now, Joseph Smith doesn't say this, but what would have happened is that it would have created an influx problem with all the converts and just would have aggravated that. Okay, where do you put all these people? But the other issue would have been you would have had the manpower to finish the Nauvoo Temple and the Nauvoo House. Alman Babbitt, it's interesting too, is that the verse previous to this one, it says, I, the Lord, will build up Kirtland, but I, the Lord, have a scourge prepared for the inhabitants thereof. So Alman Babbitt, and he wrote Joseph Smith a letter. So this is 19th of October, 1841, on the Joseph Smith papers. And Alman Babbitt told Joseph Smith this, Now, my brethren, I do not want to be rebellious. The Lord knows my heart. That's always the fatal start. I don't want to be a critic of the rebel church. I'm not apostate. Is that the kingdom may rule forth in the earth, but I want something tangible to act upon if you want all the brethren to leave this place. In other words, okay, he's going to slow walk it, and can you provide me with some more information? And once I get some more information, then I'll feel comfortable in acting. I want something tangible to act upon if you want all the brethren to leave this place. Say it in so many words that they may know that it is there now about 500 members in this place and a good many churches adjacent to the stake. We have got the house of the Lord in middling good repair. We're now about laying a new bell deck, and we have made provision for the poor. And you must know there are 100 poor English saints left here at one time who could not get any further, and most of them are doing well. So what the stake president in Kirtland tells the prophet, well, we got things are running smoothly here. They're just ducky here. All the programs are in place, and he's trying to talk Joseph Smith out of doing this. And this is a modern instance of Mark 8:33, where Peter tells Christ, and then Christ responds, Get thee behind me, Satan, for thou savoreth not the things that be of God, but the things that be of men. That's what he was doing. And this is the instance where local leaders were undermining prophetic counsel. This is steadying the ark. This is building a golden calf. This is what happens when local leaders start tweaking with the church program. Today we're having a Harry Potter party. The late prophet Russell M. Nelson said we need to get ready for the second coming. So instead of having a fireside about the book of Revelation, we're having a Harry Potter party. Wise and foolish virgins. Church leaders who don't want to divide the elders' quorum at 96 elders. That's an instance of it. The bishop who tells the financial clerk to squirrel some money away so they don't have to return it back to the stake. Okay, take this money, put it in the ward mission fund with the intention to deceive the stake president to keep money for programs. It happens when they're more important, when local leaders are more focused on throwing parties than fasting and praying for people. As this last conference demonstrated, when you show up to a meeting, you don't talk about parties, or talk about names of people that you're contacting. That's what's going on. Golden calves. Let's see. Let me skip over that. This ends with the section ends with the church organization, the first presidency, patriarch, quorum of the 12, the priesthood offices. This finally gives an explanation about what a high priest is supposed to do. A high priest is to be a president and leadership within the stake. So let me get to point 3. Well, for a long section, we were at 20 minutes. We're almost done. This is a good instance of how you can compress it, how you can get to the point without blathering on about stuff. So in point 3, stock. It's interesting how people react to this. The church was given a revelation to set up a company with stock, and there's a command for people to buy stock in this. Now, remember the experience with the United firm, the Kirtland Safety Society. Some of these saints had been burnt by trusting church finances. But you get this revelation. This may have been the Mount Moriah for some of them, investing in this church-owned company. The church has a stock portfolio. If you have a 401k, you have a stock portfolio. Where else are you going to put your money? Safe bets, double E bonds with the federal government, certificates of deposit, money market accounts. But the wisest thing you can do is do it in growth stock mutual index funds, these index funds. And if a church is putting it, that's a safe and sane place to put it. Crypto's too fluctuating and wild to really trust it. We just don't have enough experience with it. Now I have some money in crypto, but it's sort of pocket change. But it's not what I'm trusting my retirement on. So the church commands you to invest in stocks. So you have to rethink that. Rethink the free enterprise system here in America. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, it was a common cliche, and it was a very wrong-headed cliche to say that the quickest way to Jackson County, Missouri was by way of Moscow, comparing our system to communism. I have a degree in history. I minored in political science. I've been to Russia. No, there are no bishops in communism. Communism is atheistic. The distribution's a lot different. Anyone who says it doesn't know what they're talking about, and it's corrupting things. So rethink if you're a tithing protester, rethink that. Read the section. Say, maybe you're wrong about the church's stock portfolio. I mean, if you have a 401k, that's a double standard. Here we are, 22 minutes. I've gotten to the point. Here's a Christ quotient. Reframing failure. Bishop Cassé talked about this in April 2025, this verse. Verily, verily, I say unto you that when I give a commandment to any of the sons of men to do a work unto my name, that expression again, unto my name, and those sons of men go with all their might, with all they have to perform that work, and cease not their diligence, and their enemies come upon them, and hinder them from performing that work, behold, it behooveth me to require that work no more at their hands of the sons of men, but to accept their offering. Therefore, for this cause I have accepted the offering of those who I commanded to build up a city. And I will answer judgment, wrath, and indignation, wailing and anguish and gnashing upon the teeth of the heads unto the third and fourth generation, so long as they repent not and hate me, as I make an example unto you for your consolation concerning those who have been commanded to do a work and have been hindered by the hands of their enemies and by oppression. So the first part was quoted. This verse was quoted with the manifesto, official declaration 1 was read in conference, that when you've been doing stuff and people are just hindering you and you've done your level best and your utmost to get this done and it doesn't work, the Lord's just going to withdraw a commandment. See, some of the commandments, as President Oaks talked about it, are permanent, like tithing. Some ones are temporary, serve a mission. Once you're off your mission, you always have missionary work, but serving a full-time mission, those one's a permanent, one's a temporary commandment. But sometimes when God gives a commandment and you've done your best, for example, people who aren't married, who are single, who've tried to get married. I have a relative who proposed to 3 different women, and all 3 of the women turned him down. When does this become psychologically damaging? When do you say, okay, wait, I have to rethink this? But this isn't like a mathematical formula. And we have Nephi, I'll go and do, but this is also a verse equally from the same source. God said one thing and he can say a second thing. So it seems like either these are a cop-out, but that's what life is like. And sometimes the Lord has to do that. And there's going to be a punishment for the people that hindered. We talked about the imprecatory parts of the dedicatory prayer to Kirtland Temple and in the letters from Liberty Jail. And so there's a consolation involved. The Lord understands you did do your level best. Maybe you were working with some local leaders who were setting up golden calves and steadying the arks. The Lord knows this. He's more just than we could possibly imagine and more merciful than we can imagine. But you can reframe your failure. The atonement quotient. Temple work and the atonement, or you're really connecting the gospel message. See, people, this is a tendency in Protestantism, is that in the healthcare system, people want to medicate a problem away. Just boost my insulin ejections, and I'll just be eating the deep fried Twinkies day in, day out. Microwave burritos and deep fried Twinkies, and just increase the insulin and liposuction the problem away. People try and medicate a problem away. People try and grace a sin away. Now, there's appropriate use of grace. It's described in section 93. You start with the Book of Mormon, what the Book of Mormon has to say about justice and mercy and grace, and you springboard into the best section about grace is section 93. Connecting the ordinances to the atonement. Because of the Protestant Reformation, we think that this form of where you just have to read a series of passages from the book of Romans, pray the sinner's prayer, and all will be well. And that's certainly not Christ's message. We respect people and their beliefs, but that's not Christ's message. Christ's gospel is a different gospel than what's being presented with that section. You need to have ordinances. So the question is, do you need ordinances? And if there's ordinances needed, what ordinances do you need? And can you be a good member without the temple ordinances? Well, you can be a good person, but can you be a good member? You can be good, better, best, telestial, terrestrial, celestial. A good person, that's terrestrial level. Honorable people who are deceived by the craftiness of men. No, we want celestial, think celestial. Work for the dead. I read Dante's Inferno, and it's a vision of the of hell, purgatory, and heaven. Sort of the Catholic version of the 3 degrees of glory. But in hell, Virgil is his spirit guide in that, or Dante's spiritual guide, and the Inferno is a Roman poet, Virgil. He really liked the poet Virgil. Problem was, Virgil was not a Christian. What's that term? There's a Latin term about outside the church, none can be saved. What's the Latin phrase for outside of the church, none can be saved?
The Latin phrase is extra ecclesiam.
Something happened. What's the Latin phrase for outside of the church, none can be saved?
The Latin phrase for outside the church there is no salvation is extra ecclesiam nulla salus.
Extra ecclesiam non salvat. Nullum salvat. That was a Catholic phrase, and depending upon who's pope and how much emphasis that gets. But we actually hold to the same doctrine, that there's no salvation in the celestial sense. People are going to get a degree of glory, but you need to enter these covenants to be saved. It's just not this free-floating energy like the Force in Star Wars. There is some orders to what we're doing. But it's interesting to get back to the poem, Divine Comedy. So what happens is, as they're going through, as Virgil is Dante's spirit guide, and later gets Beatrice, but so understands that outside the Catholic Church, none can be saved. So Virgil is not saved; he wasn't baptized, so he has to go to hell. But he's in a nice place of hell. He's in an upper ring, so it's okay. Then you have limbo for children. Then you have a place of purgatory. It's really interesting to study it if you can detach the emotion from it. But I've read some Protestant discussion on what happens to people who aren't baptized, and it came away with 2 answers. One is, one robs mercy, one robs justice. In one sense, yeah, you're stuck in hell, like with Dante. The other one is, there's a way to be saved if you have a general sense of God, and within what God's given you, God can save you. Sort of what's called common grace and a common understanding of God's mercy. That was Paul Copin's True for You or Not for Me, I think is what the book that was. Well, we have a better answer. So mercy and justice are both satisfied by work with the dead. The second coming quotient. President Nelson. When's the last time you read the book of Revelation? Are you taking notes so you don't become a bug on a windscreen with the second coming? Proclamation to kings. Call ye therefore upon them with loud proclamation and with your testimony, fearing them not, for they are as grass, and all their glory is as the flower thereof, which soon falleth. That's Isaiah there. That they may be left also without excuse, and I may visit them in the day of my visitation, when I shall unveil the face of my covering to appoint the portion of the oppressor among the hypocrites, where there is gnashing of teeth, if they reject my servants and my testimony, which I have revealed unto them. Second coming. Commerce. City of Nauvoo, city of Joseph. That's a pattern for all our communities. Yeah, get ready for the second coming. That's why we're building these communities, these churches, trying to get people to church. Book of Mormon prophesies that the holdings of Zion will be really small. And we're not going to be a dominant world religion. We'll be everywhere, in every country, in every nation, but we'll have very small holdings because of the power of the whore of Babylon. We can use this pattern in this section to build up our wards into a place like Nauvoo, and even our civic society, the 7 patterns. So you have this revelation, the spiritual incorporation, the Nauvoo charter, what's your education like, University of Nauvoo, the agricultural society, safety, your police force. We could use the Nauvoo experience to transform our communities and to transform our wards. We can build a city unto his holy name, and that holy name is Jesus Christ. And Christ, that's the point.